Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Zane Courtney.
And we have a cool show for you today on our podcast.
We do. We got lots of fun stuff.
Now, the picture behind us, I guess you can see a pretty good angle there.
I can raise it if you...
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, let's go up a little bit. Got lots of blue sky. This, by the way, is Sedona. And I know that you guys have heard me talk about Sedona before. I think it's one of the 7 wonders of the world, actually.
Oh,
that's a little bit too much, Jess. We want a little blue sky there to show off all that red
It's
rock.
number 8 of the 7th wonder.
Is it? Yeah, probably. You know, everybody that comes here, I'm going to the Grand Canyon. I'm going, oh, okay, it's a big hole in the ground, you know. I mean, it is spectacular, but if you really want a lot of variety and you want a lot of red rock and you want, you know, it's really Sedona is where it's at, in my opinion. Where we're sitting, or what's behind us here, is a platform or a portion of a Catholic church that's up there. It's called the Chapel of the Holy Cross. And it sits high atop the red rocks in Sedona. It was inspired and commissioned by a local rancher and sculptor, Marguerite Brunswick Stoud. And this is way in the last century, like 1932 is when she started she started this construction. She was inspired to build a church based on the Empire State Building. Now, I'm not sure. The church really doesn't look like the Empire State Building, but, you know.
If you squint.
Yeah, it's an artistic thing. Maybe she saw something with her sculpting background that convinced her that maybe she wanted to replicate.
You're like, come on, don't you see it?
So she started on the project. She actually hired Frank Lloyd Wright's son, Lloyd Wright. And she commissioned him to work on this Catholic church that looks like the Empire State Building. And they were going to build it in Budapest in Europe, but World War II broke out. So instead she decided, well, let's do the next best thing, and she decides to build it in Sedona, which we're all glad that that's where it got built because now we're able to enjoy it.
And it fits that place so perfectly.
Absolutely.
Being built into the rock itself. It's like, that's what makes it number 8 of the 7 wonders, because it's just this absolutely perfect piece to fit in there.
Wait a minute, sorry, you want this picture up, Pete?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me get this for the audience.
Yeah, let's get the picture of the
thing.
church itself from down below, and then we'll put the backdrop back up.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like going up to Sedona from Phoenix, it really is its own. Like, going up there by itself, you'll get more diversity in look at that.
Yeah, there we go. We've got a pic. Look at all that red rock. By the way, the reason for the red rock is they didn't paint it. It has iron oxide.
Mm-hmm. Very common here in this part of the U.S.
And every time it rains, you get some more rusting, and that reddish rust color comes out.
Where I grew up, actually, we've got lots of that same rock.
Really?
I grew up about 20 minutes from Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado, and that's it's one of the world's greatest music venues because it's a natural amphitheater.
Cool.
So they do everything they can to preserve the natural acoustics of the place, and it's made out of the same rock.
No kidding. I had a girlfriend once up there that took me to the Garden of the Gods.
Yes. Yep. Same
what
thing.
What a special place. And, you know, speaking of special places, Sedona is magical. I mean, the whole area up there.
Gorgeous.
But I don't want to get metaphysical here, but if you go in this church, there is a eerie presence there of just tranquility and peacefulness that pervades your very soul. You got to listen for it. You can't go in shouting and screaming and, you know, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
The tourists
skateboarding.
do.
Yeah, right.
But if you really just stop a moment, compose yourself, meditate a little bit or whatever, you can feel it. It's very magical. So anyway, moving on here. Do you want to hit some questions?
Sure, I do. From TikTok, from Michael Dusbury. What is the best breaker size to run our Tesla charger run our Tesla charger for our Model 3 with the large battery?
You know, I see a lot of questions on Facebook, and, you know, where's the cheapest electrician, you know, to hook up my wall charger? And what price should I expect? Well, let me clarify something. For an electrical installation where you're running past 20 amps, which these chargers all take about 80 to 100 amps, There is no such thing as a predictable installation cost because you have numerous variables. For example, in your garage, how far is that from the circuit breaker panel that's outside? And what do they have to dig through, chip through, drill through to get there, you know? And then what are your local codes? You know, how strict are they regarding conduit use? Can you go underground? You know, all of that.
Exactly.
So there is no such thing as a fixed cost for these charger installations. And if you go cheap, you may end up making a mistake. I would go with a reputable electrical contractor that has a good track record of putting in, you know, commercial type installations. So to answer that question is, look at the charger specifications and make sure that your electrician matches the recommended input current, breaker size in other words, and it's either going to be 80 or 100 amps. And then make sure they use the right size wire for that much amperage, and it goes on and on. There's no such thing as cheap or bargains in that world.
And there's two things I can add to that real quick is one, Chevy actually has this initiative with their own vehicles now where they're offering free installation for their chargers at your place. So I don't know, like you said, because it's not a fixed cost, I don't know exactly how much that's going to affect the price of purchasing the vehicle because it's some kind of incentive program. But that's something kind of wild to think that you're going to get an electric car and they're like, yeah, we're going to give you the infrastructure to support that.
First thing that comes to mind is they're going to have winners and losers, and their margin on that car sale is going to vary greatly depending on which customer they selected to sell that car to.
But, and then that leads into my next point, which is if you're lucky enough to, say, have your washer and dryer kind of close to the garage. I've seen a lot of people, they'll just run multi-breaker. They have some kind of smart splitter now so that you can run that out of that 240 volt socket. Right. And you can switch it between your laundry and your car whenever one's not in use.
Or dryer, yeah.
Or the dryer,
kitchen range or hot water heater, they're all 240.
Yeah, right.
I love this question. Go up a little bit, guys. There was one about the sunglasses.
Oh, here we go. Yep. It's a question that will never stop coming until we actually give an answer.
Ian Danks 2. Should I consider investing in sunglasses with the stock market?
Yes, absolutely, and it's Gruber Motors' fault.
Our prediction here is, with the coolness factor that we are adding to sunglasses, along with the Blues Brothers, by the way, I think that a sunglass manufacturer investment is a well-timed early investment to bring in lots of money for
you heard it here, folks, guys. Yeah. Blues Brothers walked so that we could run.
Exactly. Yeah. All right.
Real quick, though, when we get into that kind of realm, even if we're messing around, we have to say we're not financial professionals.
This is not financial advice. Yeah. For legal reasons, that's a joke. From YouTube, Thomas on YouTube. All right, here's one for you, Pete.
All right.
So they decided to go for a Model 3 over a Model S. They felt like the Model 3 is a more technically advanced car in all that it is. What's your opinion on that compared to a used Model S until 2016? So I guess they bought a used Model 3, probably a 2018, I'm guessing. So what would you say between a 2018 Model 3 and a 2016 Model S?
Well, you know, one thing that Tesla does well is they put quality into all of their vehicles, and there really hadn't been a quantum leap in technology between the Model S and the Model 3. You know, we're not looking at a substantially different drivetrain. It still has a three-phase AC induction motor. It still has an inverter that converts DC to AC. The screen is mounted in a different spot. But one thing that Tesla does is they take all of their best practices as the products evolve and incorporate them, even retroactively. That's why you're constantly getting firmware updates with your Model S. And when you need an MCU replaced, you're going to get a newer version, you know, with more robust, you know, more memory, that type of thing. So I don't think there's a lot of difference or advantages to going to a later platform Tesla vehicle because the improvements are actually retroactive in many cases.
Yeah, yeah. From Soulstone.
Oh, wait a minute. LinkedIn. Russell Hayes.
Sorry, from Russell Hayes on LinkedIn.
What is the point of this show?
What is the point of this
show?
show?
It's, I don't think, it could be construed as a snarky comment, but no, Russell, I'm going to take this as a legitimate question. And it's a good question. Our point is to digest the volumes of technical information that gets spread into the market and attempt to analyze it for you guys to give you a basic, understandable version.
About the EV market specifically.
About the EV market, exactly, or even alternative energy use. Our fundamental mission here is to promote the use of sustainable energy and to put this to heal this planet and put it back on track. And anything that we're engaged in, you're going to see has that overriding end result in mind, just like Tesla's core mission. So that's the point of this show. And again, we let our viewers and audience determine where we take it. So if you have specific interests or questions, give them to us. We'll even, if we find it interesting enough, we'll do videos. We'll do the research, we'll do a video, and we'll make it part of our YouTube content. So Russell Hayes, great question. Thank you for asking it.
And hopefully you'll stick around.
Yeah.
From Soulstone on Instagram, is there a big power loss? If so, at what % does a Model S or a Model 3 start slowing down? I guess they're talking about phantom power draw or battery degradation.
Well, the way that I interpret it is perhaps it's we're talking about the relation of the state of charge in the battery.
Oh, okay.
You know, in a slot car, for example, as your battery decays, it goes slower and slower, or as most DC devices. In these EVs that we're involved in, that isn't the case. You're going to have the same amount of power fundamentally that you would even with a fully charged battery.
I've seen that before with people who run particularly slow. Like, let's say they're doing a Tesla road trip. It's kind of common practice for them to sort of slow down just a little bit to eke out just a mile more to get them to a supercharger. That's not uncommon, but that's also true in gas cars.
Sure.
With gas cars, you know, typically if you keep the same RPM over a long period of time, that's also clean for the engine as well, keeps you better gas mileage. It's the same principle, just done more electrically.
Or don't run the AC.
Yeah, he actually adds something to that. The last part of the question is drag racing in plaid. Well, the answer to that is if you're shaving seconds like you would be at the quarter-mile track, then yeah, go for a maximum charge. Now, the exact opposite is true with an internal combustion engine car. If you've got a full tank of gas and you're at the quarter-mile drag strip, that's going to slow you down a bit because of the extra weight. So you want to shave as much weight as possible or have as little fuel as possible in your tank.
I just saw there was a clip that someone had posted on YouTube, TikTok, I think it was, where they made the point that, let's say the Model S compared to a Porsche 911, EVs are quick but not fast. And they learned this by taking them to the Nuremberg track. And they said, all right, what they found out is that the Model S can take turns quickly, but overall it actually had a slower time than a 911 that can do the whole track on one tank of gas. And it's a smaller, lighter car that's able to do that, which is still comparable to a Porsche 911, which is pretty impressive.
There's also a recent distinction that we should talk about, quick and fast.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We should talk about that.
Is 0 to 60 time. Fast is top speed. So for a top speed car, you're going to want a Bugatti Veyron, you know, in excess of 250 miles an hour. We can't quite do that with an EV yet unless we get into a transmission, and then we're going to be burning up clutches again.
Yeah, right.
And the aerodynamics would have to alter dramatically because, you know, at those speeds, a Model S is going to look like a brick going through the air.
Right.
But yeah, quick is 0 to 60. Fast is the top speed, so we do need to separate those.
And with
two.
that electric torque that's able to give you that instant 0 to 60, it's no wonder that people are putting that emphasis on the EV specifically.
EVs are quick, yeah. You know, we talked about this. I have another topic for you guys. The EV manufacturers, of course, are new to this game. So many of them, they're not mature auto manufacturers. There was something in the news just this morning that the paint on a Lucid Air is thin and that a PPF installer said, you know, we have to compensate by putting extra PPF on this car in order to protect the paint or whatever. But the bottom line is the EV manufacturers are new to this game. They're not like the incumbents that have had decades to perfect their skills, to perfect their quality processes, quality control processes, or even their production processes. So here's another indication of that being the case with Rivian. Apparently Rivian is now having problems in certain climates where the headlights are icing over. And it's reducing the amount of visible light, you know, reducing their visibility. at night. And you might say, well, why didn't they take it to a really cold climate and take it through the paces? Well, I'm sure they did.
They did. They took it up to Alaska for several months. They had promo videos about that.
There you go. And then, of course, the very hot climates.
Right.
Tesla missed that step early on with the Tesla Roadster, and there was a wealthy sheik in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, I forget which now, that complained about his Roadster going into power limiting mode because it was warming up too much,
Yes.
getting too hot.
Yep.
Well, so we immediately jumped to conclusions. They didn't do their validation testing well enough. It turns out that this is a problem in warmer, snowy climates where the snow is very wet and readily sticks to the vehicle. Like you mentioned, living in Four Seasons, you get that certain type of cold where you've got sleet and rain combinations,
Yep.
and then you've got things icing over pretty dramatically, where you're chipping with a chisel off your windshield to get the ice off.
You don't see that in places like Arizona, Colorado, certain other climates similar to that, where it's just dry cold.
Yep.
But here's what I want to know is, why don't we get the same complaint on gas cars if they also have LED headlights?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, maybe our audience will help us there. But to continue with this this problem that has now been reported that Rivian is seeing with icing headlights, the problem is they have LEDs, and LEDs are 75% less electricity than traditional halogen headlights for the same light output. So they're more efficient. They're better. This means that the LEDs are more effective at turning electricity into light, releasing less waste heat in the process, and that's the problem. That waste heat can come in handy in colder climates when you're trying to keep ice off of your lenses in ice and snow. So without the warmth, the headlight can freeze and reduce their light output. I found that interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Are you? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was supposed to be a picture popped up.
Yeah, and I'm still thinking about that because with LEDs, that's a common problem. There they are.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. This seems kind of propagandistic if it's only Rivian having these problems, because like ever since I think it's like 2013, new cars have been using LEDs primarily as OEM.
It's probably because people are looking for problems with EVs,
Oh,
and this
sure.
one made the news, and this is noise level stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the same thing happens with ICE cars, but
Well, it's not only that, but you have to remember with regular ICE cars, wouldn't you have engine heat helping that?
That's true. Yeah, you have that less often. But I do.
yeah.
If it's on the outside of the car, I wonder how much that translates.
Maybe it's curvature of the headlight. There we go. We've got another element.
There we
here.
go.
This looks pretty
Yeah.
flat to me. It looks like an oval, flat headlight. But anyway,
They are
interesting. Got a few questions here.
From Instagram, from Nikki Skills, can a 2015 Model S be upgraded to have the side camera displays? How can I unlock my 70D to a 75? Okay, there's a few questions here. Let's kind of start with that first one. Can a 2015 Model S be upgraded to have the side camera displays?
Yeah, take one at a time. The cameras, I know that Tesla doesn't have an option for you. You can go down and say, I want to buy the upgrade camera kit and put that on my Model S. But Tesla, if you're listening, maybe that's a good idea. Get yourself some of this get involved in the aftermarket space. Don't know how much demand there's going to be for this.
Yeah, right.
Can I unlock my 70D to a 75? Well, if it's a software issue where Tesla has intentionally degraded your 70 pack, the answer is no, you can't do it yourself. If you do, you may get into trouble because if they're charging for this upgrade, you violated something.
Yeah, right.
And someone can come after you. And if it's a shop willing to do that, they're also in that legal stream, for any. So it looks like the rest of the question went away. We had a third portion of that.
But it's funny because we talked about the opportunity for third parties to enter in this aftermarket space, and there already are some competitors. It's funny, actually, Rich Rebuilds just had a video regarding his Batmobile side-by-side that had an unfortunate incident at SEMA. Not too bad. It was just some battery overheating and some smoke.
Sure.
But they had talked about several companies that are already going out of their way from making ICE car aftermarket parts to Tesla aftermarket parts.
Very cool. We need that.
I wish I
we
could
need a lot
remember
more
some
of
of those titles off the top of my head, but one starts with a B, B, E, That doesn't sound right, but it's something like that.
So to give you an example of how this could end up being a problem for an owner or a shop that does a conversion, in the critical power world, the OEMs there will sell you a 250 kVA UPS, which is the capacity of that UPS, but you can derate it to 50 kVA. And then to upgrade it, you have to pay them. In one case, it's like $14,000.
Oh, wow.
And all they do is they go in with a laptop and they click a little check field and they unlock it for you and charge you $14K. Now, the ethical question here is, but I paid for the entire hardware package. Yeah, but you didn't pay for that padlock software, you know? So if you go in and do it yourself, you could have a problem because somebody lost $14,000 worth of revenue, and now they have cause of action. If a shop does it for you, again, they're going to charge you something for it. Well, we've diverted the revenue stream to someone that wasn't supposed to be involved in that. Again, the OEM can come after you, and they've got legal cause of action.
Boy, and there's a whole Pandora's box with that because you've had, because you've seen most recently with Volkswagen, was it? Volkswagen, who had the subscription service for heated seats.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that.
No, BMW. Thank you. Sorry, I knew it was one of those guys. So BMW was offering subscriptions for things like luxury features, like for heated seats and things.
Yeah.
And I'm in those community of people that are really skeptical about that because the hardware is already built into the vehicle that you've already purchased at full price, and yet somehow they're going to be able to remotely limit those features based on a subscription plan. I don't like that either. I'll be honest. I think if you buy the car, you buy everything that's in the car. That's your car. I think it's kind of crazy. With certain operating systems and features and things like that, I can kind of understand, but not for a heated seat.
All right. Well, we've heard Zane's view on this. We'd like to hear from you guys now and see how you feel about this. And we obviously know how the OEMs feel about this. If there's a revenue stream, they're going to want 100% of that.
Yeah, right. We'll see where it goes. And then there was one last question. Can a 15 Model S charging abilities be upgraded and sped up?
That's sped up. You know what? We're going to talk about charging in a little while here on this podcast.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
TikTok, what's the best VFM EV across the world? What's a VFM?
Don't know what that means.
Is it vehicle maybe it's a typo. Vehicle manufacturer.
TikTok 121K EV 121. Give us some clarification. We'll entertain the question again.
From Instagram, from Fami Herman 175. Hi. How do you make the battery essentially Tesla Model S?
X and S do not experience differences in each cell.
Oh, I see what they're saying.
Yeah, you know, the future is going to be a completely different battery technology. Right now, unfortunately, for safety reasons, if you get 1 out of 7,000 cells that go south on you, they can't charge that because it's going to ignite. It's going to ignite the rest of the pack on top of that. So for safety reasons, they limit charging to the weakest cell in the pack, which could be a real problem. You've got 7,000 of them, right? I think the future is going to be battery management system right down to the cell level. And it's going to have to be some really cheap chips in order to do 7,000 of them. But in the future, wouldn't it be cool if you had battery management to the cell level? One of those 7,000 goes bad, the firmware says, oop, you're no longer going to play with us, we're going to shut you off. And now your battery problems, at least for resistive cells, are over with because the car can do it itself.
Yeah. Oh, can you imagine? And how cool would it be as if after that, then how nice would it be to be able to take the pack out and just replace cells?
Right.
And get the car back on the road. I mean, that would be incredible.
So we get this question a lot. Instagram, Soulstone. Do you see any ability to make a 2022 Model S long range faster than the current mode? Meaning, is there any room in the power battery as it limits it, or is there still some tweaking that can be done?
It's another jailbreak question, I think.
Well, this is a question, or actually a opportunity for aftermarket people that are interested in getting into the EV tuning space. The simple answer is yes. You can overdrive that inverter, you can overdrive that motor, you can modify the software. And again, as everything in life, there's an upside and downside. If you've overdriven your inverter and your motor, it'll perform a whole lot better at the quarter-mile strip. And for that, that quarter-mile run, 10 seconds or less, it's probably safe to do that. But if you're going to drive home on the freeway after having tweaked it, you're probably going to damage some stuff.
Exactly. I mean, people don't even do that with regular cars nowadays. They've got their track car, and then they've got the truck to haul it on. There's no difference.
Right. You know, Zorian the Barbarian thinks you're Kevin Bacon.
That's correct.
It is correct. All right. We'll take autographs.
I appreciate that. Thank you. From Soulstone. Continuing with Soulstone. They've been testing a 22 Model S long range. Is the vehicle at its limit when it hits, here we go, 10 seconds, just over 10 seconds at 131 miles an hour.
I think he's talking about the quarter mile stats.
Yeah, that's quarter mile stats.
10.76 seconds, 131, 60 feet at 1.8. You know, again, the vehicle being at its limit has to do with the production settings and the tweaking that you could do aftermarket by tuning it. There aren't any companies that I'm aware of yet that are tuning EVs to that extent, although it's a ripe market. Any of you listening out there that want a business opportunity, go for it. Just make sure you have hefty insurance.
Mm-hmm. People can already get practice on tuning their electric motors and things with electric bikes.
Yeah.
I've heard of people doing that quite often. So not outside the realm of possibility. From Duradiesel1 on TikTok, how many lithium recycling centers are there in the U.S.? Ooh, that's a good Google question. But I know that we've talked about Redwood Industries quite a bit.
Yeah, Redwood Materials is one of the largest.
Materials.
Building a second one now closer to a Tesla plant. And I'm sure that there are smaller ones that are involved in this. In fact, we get calls all the time. What do you guys do with your scrap Tesla Roadster batteries? And I said, well, we don't have any scrap. We fixed them all. We tried to, right? Don't have any scrap yet.
We'd be in trouble if we had scrap.
Yeah. Someone's pointing out that the light problem from Instagram,
oh, here we
Nikki
go.
Skills. Maybe gas car lights don't have that problem because the lights are close to the motor heat. That's what Jesse was saying.
Exactly.
Now remember, we're driving down the road though, and you're getting all that cool air that is replacing the heat that's behind the engine. But you know what? You're stopped at a red light.
Yeah,
stop
right.
sign or whatever. Yeah, that's a good point.
Or you know, some people, they let their car warm up for a few minutes before get going on the road. And you know, there's a continuing conversation about how temperature affects cars. You know, with gas cars, they tend to do pretty well despite cold, which is something that EVs haven't fully proven themselves to be yet. Yeah. You know, we keep talking about how they like to have a pretty moderate temperature for proper operation. Sometimes it gets too hot, sometimes it gets too cold. And so we'll see, you know, as battery technology continues to evolve, and maybe HVAC technology continues to evolve with that, you know, we'll see. But a lot of people do seem to be concerned about the winter months in regards to EVs. Now, a lot of owners have tended to kind of dispel that myth that a lot of EVs are pretty great in the winter, especially with that added power to be able to get them in and out of snow. Model 3s are apparently hilariously good snow cars. We saw from the guys at Out of Spec have done some tire reviews and so on and so forth. But it is a good conversation to follow in that regard.
Got a good question here from TikTok. Duradiesel. How much are you all being paid to promote EVs?
I'm not.
You know, it's a fair question.
You guys get paid.
We're not important enough yet to have money thrown at us. And will we change if we do? Well, I think the DNA of this show is going to be bipartisan, to be, you know, to keep it middle of the road. And as long as I'm involved, I don't think that we should ever allow any kind of special interest to influence our content.
Correct.
This has to be free speech. It has to be, you know, say it like you call it. And at this point in time, anyway, to answer that question, yeah, we're not big league enough to have anybody even offering. Occasionally, we'll get a vacuum cleaner manufacturer, or we'll get a detailing material or a tire shine company that wants us to talk about their product. But yeah, so at this point, it's completely unbiased. TikTok, call Memming G. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
From also from TikTok, from Batman Harrison. Batman has risen.
Batman has
What's
risen,
with the sunglasses? How come, I thought we were going to announce
Well, we
that.
have 2 questions from him. What's with the sunglasses? We're going to do a video someday. In the meantime, we're just going to look cool up here with sunglasses. If you're confused by that notion, go watch some Blues Brothers videos and you'll understand. Barbara Batman Has Risen also asks, will you open a Gruber on the East Coast?
Ooh, good question.
You know, scaling at this point is extremely difficult, and that gets me into a radio talk show that I did last week.
Yes.
Where the question was, they had a bunch of mechanic shops that are focused and interested in moving into the EV space, and they invited me to talk about our trajectory from being no business to working in the EV space. And my answer to that is, it's very difficult for a mechanic shop with years of mechanical skills working on ICE vehicles to pivot and transition into something that requires a whole host of new and different skills. And as disappointing as this was to their audience, I pointed out that it's much easier for a shop or a operation or business coming from the electronics world into EVs, because in the independent space, we don't have the luxury of a large parts room with a bunch of subassemblies where you can do module swapping. You need another motor, go get a whole drivetrain. You need another computer MCU, get the whole thing and replace it. What we have to do is component level troubleshooting, meaning that we have to go right down into the circuit boards. We have to find those bad MOSFETs, transistors, microchips, and develop schematics in the process, because none of the manufacturers are going to share documentation with us. Those skills are not inherently embedded in a mechanic shop. So for those companies wanting to get into the EV repair space, into the independent EV repair space, you're going to have to acquire 3 distinct skills. The most important being electronics, the second one being software skills, and the third one, in order of importance, is going to be wrenching. You know, the low-tech auto stuff, brakes, suspension, tires, you know, door hinges, or whatever else is involved in a mechanical repair.
Where can people find that interview? Is it available yet? Do you know?
It's a Wrench Nation, was it, guys?
Yeah, that was Wrench Nation. I'll look up the website and get it to you before
we
end
post
up
it.
here.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great interview, and I think it was quite revealing, not only for the interviewers, but their audience as well. Now, I wish I had better news. We talked a lot about right to repair. Are the OEMs motivated to share their proprietary information with the open public? You know, it's going to be hit and miss. They're forced to do it at times because of legislation changes. But, you know, I think this late in the game, the farmers in the Midwest still can't change oil on their John Deere tractors because of proprietary software and lockdowns on the ability to service what has become more complicated equipment. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that the manufacturers do it. They don't want people digging in a battery pack that's got 400 volts. When somebody gets killed doing that, guess who's liable?
Right.
I'm pulling that website up for the audience now. You should see it as well.
There you
Wrench
go.
Nation, there you
Go
go.
to wrenchnation.tv to check out that interview, and shout out to the Wrench Nation guys for getting you on there.
They're providing a great service, by the way. You know, showing the mechanic shops how to migrate and what the future holds. So to answer that simple question, will we open on the East Coast? We have the same problem. We can't find the skilled people to do that. And until we have, you know, a lot of competition, opening up in some other area of the country means that we have to take short or staff that we're already short on here and transfer them somewhere else.
Another comment from call me Minji from TikTok. Call me Minji from TikTok. That it's interesting how Tesla will share the patents, but not how to fix the cars.
Yeah, and there are a number of reasons for that, guys. In all fairness, Tesla has a lot of competition. And if they were to begin to release schematics and wiring diagrams and software and you know, things that an average person could fix a car with, not only would they be feeding a whole bunch of new competition, but they would also be releasing vital intellectual property to companies that are up and coming, that are, you know, in a strong position to compete with them.
Yeah, right. As we continue continue to see more competition in the space, that might be an opportunity to open up that information. But until then, it's going to have to stay under pretty tight lock and key, and that's probably for the best for now.
You know, like the right to repair that we discussed in that radio show. Yeah, the manufacturers are forced to release certain information, software tools, for example, but they're under no obligation to train you and teach you how to use it and how to decipher the what the information that's being extracted by the software means. So that's a whole nother issue.
Mm-hmm. From Nikki Skills on Instagram, is battery degradation gradual, or does it speed up as it lowers? Oh, that's a good question. So like currently at 91%, and it hasn't lowered in a year. So is it going to degrade faster as it degrades?
Sure. Well, the best benchmark we have to determine what the lifespan of a multi-cell 18650 lithium-ion battery pack is a Tesla Roadster. They were released in 2008. The majority of those batteries are still going strong. We have not yet reached a phase where there is a mass cell failure. There are aberrations, which we deal with all the time. You get one cell out of 7,000 that goes resistive, and the next thing you know, it needs a trip to our service center to have it recovered and have that cell neutralized and isolated. Tesla doesn't do this anymore. They're not equipped in their service centers to open the battery packs at that level and do repairs like this. So to answer that question, we're still writing the book on what's happening to these mass cell lithium-ion battery packs and how they're going to age and when that mass cell failure will occur. Is there a increase in cell failure as they age? We've not seen that either. So at this point, no one knows.
So we'll find out.
Okay, Pete, we are coming up on about 42 minutes. If you want to, I know you still have a couple articles to get to, right?
We do. Got a cool company, Australian company called Eviation. It's a play on words. Aviation, electric vehicle, Eviation. Guess what they make? They make an electric airplane. We're all waiting, wondering when that was going to happen.
I've been wondering that since 2010 when Iron Man 2 came out and there was a cameo with Elon Musk in that movie. And he says, oh, by the way, I've got an idea for an electric jet. And little me thought, that's impossible.
What's really intriguing, and there was a company that did that with ICE vehicles briefly in the last century, is a car boat. Something that you can drive on the road and then, take right out into
I've always wanted an amphibious car.
Yeah.
I've always wanted one.
Well, this airplane is not a dual purpose. It's not a plane and a car, although that's coming, guys. What this is, and it's in Australia, and there's already a pre-order for 20 of these, which they'll be supplying that to an Australian airline.
I've got the article up for the audience.
Perfect. All right. It will be a short jaunt, 300-mile journeys within Australia. And the airspeed is also kind of interesting. It is 250 nautical miles, which is 287 miles airspeed, which isn't bad. It has a maximum payload of 2,500 pounds, which would be 9 passengers or 12 my size. And anyway, this thing is ready to go, and I guess there's a picture up there now, and it looks pretty impressive. It looks like a private jet.
Look at that.
Yeah.
That's fancy. That's no United Airlines yet.
There's also some conjecture that this may move or make hydrogen a bit more popular because either of those could be used for this application.
Isn't it my understanding is that jet fuel is mostly hydrogen as it is just because it's so light and energy dense. Am I right about that?
Don't know that.
I know that there's some major component of jet fuel that makes it light and strong enough to be able to get a plane off the ground. They don't use just regular gas. I know that.
They use aviation fuel, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Some of us used to we used to run that in our cars because it would speed things up a bit.
There you go.
It's a higher quality fuel, costs a bit more too. So if you want to fly an electric airplane, at least at this point in time, you're going to have to go to Australia to do that. We've got I've got a little segment here on charging and connectors. Can we bring up that picture? everybody asks, what's the future of charging? Why are there so many different standards? Why do we have CCS? And then we've got the Tesla Trident connector.
I was going to say, we've got a lot of news about charging as of late.
We've got the J1772.
Look at that thing. It's so big.
These two dudes right here, the one on the right is Mark Hanchett, who is the founder and CEO of Atlas, which is an EV manufacturer here in Arizona. We've been trying to reach him now for a few months. So Mark, if you're listening to us, we want to come out there and do a video segment on the cool stuff that you're doing with Atlas EVs. But anyway, what he's holding is a charge connector. And it turns out that Mark is actually active in the creation of a charging standard. What he's holding there is the Atlas AAC system, which does both AC and DC charging up to 1.5 megawatts. What the other gentleman is holding is an MCS connector, which is a level 1 MCS DC only, but it's good for 1,000 amps of current. Let me just describe something to everybody here. We all want faster charging. We all want to spend less time at the charging stations. In order to do that, you've got to run or pump more electrons into the car. In order to do that, you're going to need bigger wire sizes. Bigger wire sizes means eventually cooling, which some of these charging methods already have. I think the most elegant connector that came along is the Tesla Trident connector, that little guy that you see at the superchargers and that you have at home or that you see at destination chargers. It's a pretty versatile connector. The connector itself is used for both DC charging and AC, but the charging systems are not compatible with each other. So you can't go to a supercharger and expect to plug in your Tesla Roadster, which is a completely different charging method. It's an AC charging method.
I see.
So what the gentleman on the left there has is DC only, and both of these things are pretty large. The rule of thumb in electricity is that every time you double voltage, your current goes to half. Conversely, if you want more amperage, and you've got a lower voltage, you're going to need a much larger wire size. I think we're starting to get into the world of ridiculous when you have connectors that are this large.
It's the size of a football.
Yeah, and in the case of the one on the left, you're going to need two different ports because one is DC charging and one is AC.
Right. They've already tried that with CHAdeMO, I'm pretty sure.
CHAdeMO is huge, yes. It's also a very large connector. Again, we think the future is going to be inductive coupling charging, and people decades from now are going to laugh at this time period and say, they were actually taking cables the size of garden hoses and plugging those into the car and then having to wait a half an hour more to be able to proceed on their trip or whatever. But in the meantime, the quest for faster charging continues. And think about it this way. A car charging is going to be completely different than a semi-truck.
Yes.
Which has 12 times as many batteries as that Model Y. And you've got a financial incentive to spend as little time as possible charging because you're losing money as soon as that truck is idled. They make money while they're moving, right?
Right.
So the quest for faster charging continues, and the quest for, or the necessity for larger connectors will continue until it gets ridiculous to where you're going to need.
And Pete, I'm pulling this up. You guys should see it here in just a second. But this also goes with that company Atlas. Let me know if you can see this where they're talking about charging here.
Oh, here we go.
It says 0 to 100% in 15 minutes or less.
Wow.
With their new charging technology.
Look at that. That almost looks like CCS. And there's a lot of resources to find out what the kind of different connectors are and so forth. But in most recent news, Tesla's actually, I believe they've introduced their proprietary charger port to other vehicle manufacturers, which is a big deal because now they're going to be able to share that, so what most people consider a better charger port to the rest of the world. That's a big deal because they've already opened up the supercharger network in Europe and what they're about to start doing in the US.
Well, those Atlas guys that we just popped up there, if you guys are watching, or those of you that know them, tell them we want them on our podcast.
Yes,
We'd like you to come and talk about this development that you have created and tell us a bit about Atlas as well. any new EV manufacturer, I think, needs a lot of equal time in order to, get popular and become relevant. All right.
Good stuff. I saw there's a real quick from TikTok, El Capitan. Jet fuel is essentially kerosene. I think I saw that it's essentially kerosene. It's less, you said it's essentially diesel. Oh, no, nothing but kerosene's not energy dense. It's less than gasoline. Okay. So I was wrong about that. That it's not more energy dense, but it is a lot lighter.
Well, guys, I think what we're saying is we don't know anything about jet fuel.
Not our forte.
That have expertise,
We do know electricity.
Yeah.
If it zaps and makes something move, we know that.
So YouTube, Peter Restaino. Why don't they make a battery top cover more accessible with quick fasteners like cam locks or Zeus fasteners? That's a darn good question. I'd love that to be the case. We took a DC to DC converter apart yesterday from a Tesla Model S. Now this is a device that's vital. What it does is it takes that 400 volts from the Tesla Model S battery, converts it to 12 volts for the computer, for the audio systems, all the headlights, all the 12 volt devices. There was something wrong inside this DC to DC converter. We spent 45 minutes chipping away with chisels and screwdrivers because there was a seal around this odd-shaped DC to DC converter, and we finally got it open. Then we looked inside. I swear to you, there were 4 fuses in there, 2 large ones and 2 small ones.
Whoa.
Well, guys, Tesla, how are people supposed to work on this thing? We want fuses to be external. We want them to be accessible because a fuse blows. And when it does, it's much easier to change it if it's accessible than buried inside this pack.
I know, heck, they're pretty accessible in most cars. They're either under the hood or into the dash.
The real answer is we're in a throwaway society, and I don't think Tesla expected anyone to try to repair this DC to DC converter and threw the fuses in there just for safety reasons. But you can buy these things, by the way, for $200 to $300 on eBay. So that's probably why it's throwaway. But to get back to Peter's question, yes, the battery top on a Tesla Model S, which is 9 feet long, takes us a day to open up. It's like a sardine can. And if you open it like a sardine can, you ruin the top cover and you can't reuse it. So we have to meticulously chip away and chisel and get rid of all of that caulk that is holding that cover onto that battery. It would be so much easier if Tesla put fasteners on this, or even screws for that matter. So the real issue here, though, is these packs are not meant to be repaired. They're not meant to be taken apart at the service centers. That's why Tesla doesn't do it. Now, when they take it back to Lathrop, which is their remanufacturing center, they'll take these large Model S batteries back and they recondition them. Now they take the top off like a sardine can, roll it and toss it because they have the stamping machine right there that makes their covers for them.
Ah, I see.
We've been trying to buy those tops and those covers for those batteries because it would reduce our labor time and reduce the cost for a Tesla Model S battery repair.
All right, if you guys want to take a couple more questions, it's time to wrap up here.
All right.
Peter, great question. I hope Tesla's listening.
From Nikki Skills on Instagram, what talking points can you suggest? This might take up the rest of the show, I think, this question. What talking points can you suggest to people saying EVs are more harmful to the environment than combustion engines?
Well, there's a factor here that most people don't think about, which is the cost to produce the vehicle and then the ongoing cost to the environment as it's in use. And there's a huge difference. Every time you take out that diesel with the Cummins engine in it, in your pickup truck, you're spewing hydrocarbons in the air, creating problems for this planet. And that's going to happen as long as you own that vehicle or someone else owns it. With an EV, you have an initial upfront cost during the production, and then you're clean to a degree from then on.
Yeah.
There's still some residual because of you're using electricity, which if you're getting electricity from a coal-fired plant, yeah, you got a problem.
Right.
But most plants aren't anymore. In fact, Hawaii just shut down all their coal-fired plants. So it depends on which way you're looking at it. Up front, yes, it may be the same, more, less, it doesn't matter. But it's the long term that you really need to look at as you're driving either of those vehicles. The one is far cleaner for the environment.
I thought that was going to take the rest of the show, but you said everything I was going to say. Because I mean, you're right, and it all has to do with the redistribution of where we're going to pump that carbon, where we're going to put that energy, and as time goes on, it gives us a lot more opportunity to be able to address those specifically.
Yep.
So right now we can address simply the overhead in production. And then as a car continues its life, and by the way, that's something a lot of people, as you just mentioned, the life of the car. Look, most people will own a car realistically under 10 years. About 10 years is kind of the average that someone will own a car. I've had the honor of keeping mine for 8 years used, so the car's had a healthy 20-year life. But nonetheless, that's what you're going to see in most automobiles. Is you essentially have 2 8-year lifetimes, kind of on average.
And one thing we could take into account here as well, what I would like to see is in the future more modularity to where car EV, there's a potential point in the future where EVs aren't made anymore. Instead, it's just the batteries, right? And the batteries are swapped out, and you can just put a new battery in your car whenever you need one. And then as recycling gets better as well, the cost of manufacturing a battery isn't going to be as bad as it is now.
Yeah, that's exactly what you were talking about with right to repair. I think this is all part of the same, I think that's exactly right, like all part of the same conversation that we have about, how are we going to be able to fix our own cars? How are we going to be able to address using less material to make a better car? And it seems like that's what the cool thing about EVs are. I know that people kind of ask, like, what's the point? But the point is we're getting more for less. And that's our whole incentive as a society to be able to do more with less, materially speaking, energy-wise,
more efficient,
but also be able to uphold a standard of living that we've been blessed with. And I think that we've been able to do that more so with the electrical cars and things like that. I love that you said, modularity. I think that's going to be key, especially with getting the top covers on those batteries in the future. And so that's
options too. I mean, not every battery has to weigh 1,200 pounds.
Right.
You may not be interested in going 350 miles, especially if you like to go to the quarter-mile strip. You could get by with a 80-mile battery and shave a few seconds off of your quarter-mile performance, or tenths of a second, guy.
Yeah, right.
We've got a final Instagram question from A Diamond. I'd like to train in your company.
This is a great thing to end on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aid, we run ads every single week looking for mechanics/technicians. We don't know what to call them anymore because we need a variety of skills. But if anyone's interested in applying, it's ev@gruber.com. And we are looking for both lab technicians to work on the electronics and mechanics to work out on the floor, working on the cars. And we do train. So if you have visions of with mechanical skills and you'd like to move into electronics, this would be the place to work because we'll take you into the EV space.
Great stuff.
Yep.
Well,
Any final questions?
No, I think we can wrap it up. We're at an hour.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. TikTok, all the other platforms. We will see you next week. This is podcasts are done every Tuesday morning at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time.
We'll see them this Thursday.
Thursday, 8:30 Mountain Standard Time. And in between, we release videos. So if you like to see what's going on in our service center and some of the questions that you ask end up turning into videos, keep an eye on our YouTube channel or our YouTube Shorts. And we have, I think, Facebook Shorts too, right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Facebook Reels. Okay, there we go. Again, I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Zane Courtney.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you Thursday.